Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the book Refuge and welcome to Valentine's week. I pretty much feel like my channel is like made for Valentine's since I talk about romance pretty much every day of my life. That's basically all that I read. But, I like to do something a little extra special for, this time of year for lovers. Particularly if you're single like me and you wish you had as great of a relationship or life as some of these books that I'm going to recommend, I got your back here. All right, so I think it won't be a surprise, a lot of these that I'm going to share, but then some of them might surprise you. So today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite relationships. Now, I have made a video like this before, and I made it a very long time ago, but I will link that video up in the cards. And so there's one particular relationship that I'm sure y'all will be like, why isn't that one on the list? It is on the list. It's on a list I made before, and I think we all know what it is since, oops, you can't see it, but yes, Jamie and Claire is probably my favorite relationship, but we're not talking about that one because that one like stomps on top of everyone else's, so we're just gonna let that one go. And I also don't have the takeover on this one because I also feel that way about that book. So putting those aside, here are some from the last couple of years that have some of my favorite relationships, either how the couples communicate or how their relationship has built or how sexy it is. And, I'll give you a couple of those reasons, but we're going to keep this one going pretty quickly because besides one of these books, which I only just read last week, I have talked about these books ad nauseum on my channel. So I feel like I don't need to go into full detail, but who knows? Who knows? Because I will go into heavy detail sometimes and I can't stop myself, but we'll see where we go. Let's go ahead. Let's start with one that slowly some people are coming to agree with me as they read these books. But one of my favorite relationships I read last year was the Spider's Mate trilogy. So this is Catan and Ivy, and yes, that is a giant Spider-Man. And yes, I do have fan art of this that was given to me by the artist, and I love them. I love them so deeply. This is a alien romance, and this is by Tiffany Robert. And I love this starts as like a kind of a rescue scenario that then becomes a, not a miscommunication trope, but like a communication barrier situation because they don't both speak English. That becomes a friends to lovers and is actually like a fated mate situation. And I love this couple so much. They make me smile. They make my guts turn inside out. But their relationship, as it has been built and as we see it progress over the 3 books in this series, the other 2 are actually right behind my head, I was just fascinated by it, and they just make my heart so happy. So they had to be on this list. Then we have Moonstruck by Onley James. This is the 3rd book in the Necessary Evil series. This one is about Atticus Mulvaney and Jericho Navarro. And if you don't know, this is actually a series about serial killers. It is gay serial killers, situations. And our hero in this one, who is the Mulvaney, which that's the family of killers, he doesn't particularly like this job that the family has him do. He finds killing distasteful, finds it messy, even though he knows it's necessary. And the job that they do, they kill bad people. That's what they do. They kill child abusers and rapists and murderers and all that, but he doesn't like it. And then one day he's sent to kill someone, and there's already someone there to kill this person. And that's Jericho. And he also kills bad people, and they end up in a relationship. Now, what I love about this couple so much is that they really like fill in the other's weaknesses. And I love how Jericho he's able to read Atticus, and he's able to understand him in a way that very few people do. And I love how he's willing to like take on a lot of the things that Atticus doesn't like doing, and I just think they have really great communication, and I think that they see eye to eye in a way that few of the couples in this series have so far, because they're both coming from the place of like they both kill bad people. Jericho's doing it for a little bit of different reasons than Atticus is, but they both start on that same place. Like, this isn't one where the serial killer has to win over the other person. They're already both murderers. And I don't know, I just love them. And I particularly picked this couple in this series because I've read Headcase, which is the book after this, and I really like seeing how much Jericho takes care of Atticus. He now is kind of like his killer by proxy. Like, he takes his jobs for him because he knows Atticus doesn't like doing it and Jericho doesn't mind doing it, so it works out well for both of them. Then, you know, my favorite book of 2021 was going to show up in here, and that's going to be Carnal Urges by J.T. Geissinger. I will never stop talking about this book. I will never stop talking about this couple. This is Declan and Sloane. This is a mafia romance. This starts as a captor-captive situation. Sloane has done something to kind of, she's meddling in things she doesn't understand. She is a chaotic good type of woman, chaotic and neutral maybe even, I don't know. And Declan gets sent to kidnap her to kind of use her as leverage, and then his boss gets killed, and now he is the head of the mafia, and he does not want that responsibility at all. And now he has this woman he's kidnapped, and he doesn't know what to do with her. And the way that Sloane keeps Declan on the back foot is fascinating to me. Like, honestly, it's fascinating. And I just love them. I love them so much. I love how once Declan decides that Sloane is meant to be with him, he pulls out all the stops. He ties up loose ends. He cleans up situations so that they'll be safe to be together. And he makes it happen. He manifests his destiny so he can be with Sloane. And Sloane is terrified of it because she hasn't been the best with commitment, but also she knows that this is a dangerous job, and loving a man or marrying a man who is a mafia boss is not great for longevity, and it's not great for a happily ever after. And she's still a young woman. She's in her late 20s. He's in his 40s. She's like, how soon am I going to be a widow? When's this going to happen? But Declan, he's not going to back down. And I love how once he clicks into this relationship, she is his, like, she's his woman, and he is going to remove all obstacles. And I just love it so much. Oh my God. I love it so much. Then the Grip and Bristol from the Grip trilogy. This is book 3. This was also one of my favorite books from last year. I mean, we know, okay, we know. This relationship is the realest, most raw, beautiful relationship on this list. It is the most real, in my opinion, which is funny. That's another book by Kennedy Ryan. This is the most, like, real and raw of her books, in my opinion. Like, so much. This is an interracial relationship between a rap star and his manager, who is also his best friend's sister. They had a near miss many years ago, and he has always wanted her in his life. By this book, book 3, they are together. They are having their life together, and they are thrown a lot of challenges, a lot of real life painful challenges, and they promise to still love each other no matter what. At the end of the day, they are going to withstand anything together. And I was terrified of reading this trilogy. I understand people being afraid of reading it because it is an emotional roller coaster. It has a lot of real life triggers. Like, there is racism, there is loss of a child, there is attempted assault in here, there is police brutality. There is a lot going on in this series. But as I've said many, many times, Kennedy Ryan has a way of not protecting you from anything, but it's also not about a blame game. It's not about trying to make you feel bad about yourself if this isn't the way you grew up, or these aren't, you know, scenarios that you're used to being around. It's more about just experience this story with these characters and love these characters. And there doesn't have to be a right or wrong answer to anything, but what's most important is that we listen and try to understand. And oh God, just love it. I just love it. I just freaking love it. Then I have a new recent read for me, and that is Entreat Me by Grace Draven. Okay, I was sleeping on this. I've been sleeping on Grace Draven. I'm sorry, okay? I thought she was a lot slower burn, and she is for a lot of her books. But to me, this one, I mean, this isn't like, you know, Insta-lust or anything. This is a very beastly man. Okay, this is, sorry, I just forgot that. Louvain, and how do I say his name? That's the problem. I know her name is Louvain, but his name is very difficult to say. Ballard? It's Ballard? Is it Ballard? Yes. Ballard of Kitactor. It's hard to pronounce, okay? I listened to the audiobook for this. But this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with the Beauty and the Beast retelling happening, but also some other twisty things going on. So Louvain's younger sister, Cinna, yes, is getting wooed by Ballard's son. And he lives in this enchanted castle. They're many, many years old. They're trying to break the curse. And he's hoping that Cinna could be the one to do that. But Louvain, who is a widow, she's a badass, sexually awakened, powerful woman in her own right, sees her sister, like, knows that her sister is being swept away by this young man. And she's like, nah. You ain't taking my sister. Where's the ring? Like, no. And so she goes with, when her sister is going to be staying at this magical castle, to get to know her possible betrothed, okay? And Louvain is like, I'm going to make sure my sister is still intact by the end of this if you're not actually going to marry her. And so she goes in, and then she meets Ballard, who is the lord of the manor. He is also cursed along with his son, but his are much more visible. Like, he's literally turning into a beast. It's very hard to see on this cover, but he's very beastly looking. But Louvain, she doesn't judge people by what they look like. And she talks with Ballard, and he's fascinated by her mind. And their attraction is so based on, like, their intelligence and their personalities. And that just speaks to me so much. And they're very aware that they have, like, a limited time together, because at the end of this, you know, he's either going to turn into a beast fully forever, or his son and Cinna are going to be able to break the curse. Like, they don't know. But either way, she's planning to, at the end of this, go back to her hometown to be there to take care of her father, who has made many bad decisions. And there's a character who's a lot like a Gaston character who's causing problems. But anyway, see, I said I would end up going into heavy detail. You knew it was going to happen. But this book is absolutely beautiful. This was a 6-star read to me. I mean, all of these ones I'm sharing with you are 6-star reads. That's why they're 6-star reads. But it was so romantic and beautiful, and it just gives me all the feels, and I love their relationship. They have great communication. I mean, there's only so much that he's allowed to tell her because there's a curse, but the way they communicate about their relationship, their wants and needs, their sexual communication is so great. Like, oh, I just love it. I love it so much. And Grace Draven, she writes beautiful relationships. She really, really does. I've been a fan so far of all the relationships I've read by her, even if they're so slow burn that I'm ready to, like, bust a nut by the end. I still really appreciate them. Then, we have one more contemporary I want to share, and that's The Bully by Sophie Lark. You knew a Lark had to show up. This was so hard to pick a relationship to share, like, of hers, because there's one relationship that I like more, and there's one that I like the same amount, and the one that I like more, I can't tell you why, because it's a spoiler for the series. And I just refuse to spoil the spy for anyone. I refuse to spoil the Kingmaker's arc for anyone who doesn't know yet. So I won't be talking about that relationship, because a big reason why a specific relationship is my favorite one is because of the full arc of that series. So if you don't know, I know I'm a tease, but you should know by now that I won't spoil that for you. So because of that, it came down to, do I pick Raylan and Riona, or do I pick Dean and Kat? And I love Raylan and Riona, absolutely do. Raylan's my favorite hero of hers. But Dean and Kat, I love how their relationship built, and I love the hints of them we get to see, like, later on, like, in The Spy, they're together still, obviously, and I'm very intrigued to see more of them in The Savage, too, like, if they'll show up in there at all. I don't know if they will or not, maybe not, but I just love how they were built, how this starts as, like, a blackmailing situation, which, again, I won't say why, because that's a spoiler for the book beforehand, but Dean has some leverage over Kat, and he is very bitter, angry person for some things that are rightfully so, and other things where you're like, Dean, you're just being a little shit. But he has a lot of pain in his life, and being able to be in control of Kat, who he's like the only person who has clocked how smart she is and how clever, and even though she's little and weak in some ways, mentally she is sharp and she notices everything. And he notices that about her. And so once he has this leverage over her, he decides that he's going to fuck with her and fuck her. That happens too. And so he basically blackmails her into being his sex slave for a month's time. He makes her wear a type of collar, and they meet every night in the old tower to sexually explore themselves together. But what I love about this, which I know that was a blackmail scenario that I just set up, is that this starts as a blackmail scenario, and very quickly the chemistry that they have, and also the genuine emotions that come out, they cannot be denied. Like they literally cannot contain themselves, and that's very overwhelming for Dean, who really wants to keep his walls up, and it's overwhelming for Kat, who's like, he's just going to play with me for a month and then cut me loose, so I shouldn't let my heart get involved in this. But neither one of them can stop that. And when this month's time is over, the way that Dean reacts and the way that he, communicates what he wants next, he never would have been able to do that at the beginning of that month, so their time spent together really affects them both. As well as something that I love that Sophie shares, because it's the sexual exploration, not in so much that they're having sex all the time, because they are, but in how they are maturing even in what they need out of sex and what they want from the other person. And it's so beautiful. Like, really, it's so beautiful how they both are coming to understand each other and themselves better through their sexual language, because this one really is where the sex comes first, but through the intimacy and how vulnerable they are willing to be, because sex is always vulnerable. Even if you're doing it as a transaction, you're still being vulnerable when you have sex with someone. But because they're willing to, bit by bit, like, do something with that intimacy that gets created, it's so amazing. Like, Sophie does that so good, because I believed that these few weeks, this month that they were intimate to each other, that they wouldn't be able to just let it go at the end. And I think Sophie does an amazing job with that, of having a lust first relationship be believable by the time it gets to the love part of it, and before they even knew it, they were being very vulnerable with each other, and it's scary. So now I have a couple historicals to share, and I don't think either one of these will surprise anyone. I have The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. Jennifer Ashley is actually going to be on my channel at the end of February. I'm very excited, and so I'm rereading a couple of her books. Now, I didn't just reread The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. I reread that a while ago, but I'm rereading The Duke's Perfect Wife, which is book 4 in this series, and it reminds me how much I love Beth and Ian, because Beth and Ian, I wouldn't say they're like prominent through the series, but whenever they show up, we're just reminded like how beautiful their relationship they have together is, because Ian, this man with a neurodivergence that he lives with, this mathematical brain, he is so in love with his wife. Like, I'm just hugging this book. Like, I'm just hugging it. And there was this really cute moment in The Duke's Perfect Wife where, like, Ian was going to have to be away from his wife for, like, 2 weeks' time because he needed to come to London to help with a situation happening in that book. And the heroine in that book is like, Ian, why don't you go back to your wife? Like, we don't need you here. You know, thank you for coming. Thank you for being worried, but like, you need to be with your Beth. And he's like, you're right. And I love it so much. Something that I also love that Jennifer Ashley did is there are like Christmas novellas in this series, which y'all know I don't usually read Christmas novellas. They're not my favorite. But Ian and Beth, we get to see their relationship at different points through like a decade worth of time. And their faithfulness and like their care of each other is so precious to me. I just love these two. I love them so much. Whenever I think of favorite relationships or most romantic books, this one always comes up for me. It's so beautiful. Now, this is like a bit dark. There's sensitive topics in this one. I know that for some people it's tough because they feel that the representation of neurodivergence isn't correct. And we do see Ian, he is put in a mental institution in a madhouse when he is young as basically a punishment from his father, and horrible things happen to him. And I have like two things to that. Number one, I can see how it'd be triggering and be tough for you, but just because one form of neurodivergence doesn't look like another, that's literally why it's called neurodivergence. And there are many different kinds of, you know, autism and Asperger's, and there's a whole different spectrum. And I've heard just as often from people saying that Jennifer Ashley has done very good research, and I've seen people say, oh, that's nothing like it is. I'm like, everyone's experiences are different. This is fiction. The author herself isn't autistic, so she can only rely on like, you can only get so much from research when you aren't actually that. And that doesn't mean that the story still shouldn't be told. Okay, like, don't we want to have heroes and heroines who are neurodivergent done to the best of the author's ability and done with respect than to not be there at all? Just something to think about. And I'm not saying you have to think that it's perfect. I'm just saying I get that critique sometimes about this book that I shouldn't promote it because of that. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, there are some people with Asperger's or autism who've directly told me that they very much connected with Ian. So just because it might not work for thee doesn't mean that it isn't truthful for someone else. So just remember that. And I feel that she does do him honor and respect. And it's no one more than Beth in this series, no one more than Beth sees that about him and sees him as a complete man, a sexy ass man, a man who cares about her pleasure, cares about the things that she wants, even though for a lot of other people he doesn't. He doesn't care about that because they don't affect him. Oh, I didn't mean to do a rant about that, but I freaking love it. And then I also have Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. This is an arranged marriage. This one is about a heroine that everyone thinks is crazy or touched or daft. They use a lot of different terms for her. I feel like this one is a little bit easier to swallow, as it were, because a lot of the terms that they use for mental disabilities, they're not the words that are offensive to us in our time right now. Like, I'm sure they were offensive to being said about this heroine, but this one takes place in like medieval times, because this one is in, it doesn't say, but this one's medieval times, medieval Scotland, and so it's not as like painful to read as it was, let's say, with Annie's song that we read for Rake Appreciation Society, where those terms being in there are definitely slurs and still are slurs today. Anyway, long story short, Graham Montgomery is told that he's supposed to marry Evelyn Armstrong, who was thought to be touched because when she was 13, she had an accident, she had a fever, and then what actually happened is she went deaf and she wasn't able to hear anything. And because of that, her family thought that she was touched because she wouldn't, interact. She played that up a bit because she was supposed to marry a man who was very abusive. And she knew that when she came of age, she was going to have to marry him. And so she figured if she was touched, then that wouldn't have to happen. And then Graham Montgomery is ordered by the crown to marry her to make peace between their families. And he isn't expecting to get anything out of this marriage because he's not going to bed a woman who has the mind of a child. And he would never, turn down this marriage because otherwise he'd be considered an enemy of the crown. So the day that he meets Evie, she is actually able to hear the deep tones of his voice. She can't like hear the words, but she can like hear the deep tones of his voice. He has such this deep, beautiful voice. And so she instantly feels this like connection with him. And instead of being afraid, she smiles at him and like takes his hand and is fascinated by him and wants to get to know him. And it makes it so she is willing to be open with him about what's really going on. The fact that she's deaf, not daft. And I love that no one else has tried to communicate with her the way that he does, and the ways that he opens up the world to her by being patient and paying attention and really just giving her the time of day. And I think it leads to a beautiful relationship. And also what I love is how fiercely he stands up for her and, you know, against his clan, who is so upset that an enemy daughter is now their mistress. And he always believes her and looks for the truth instead of jumping to conclusions. And I love that so much about this couple. They make me so happy. So there you go. These are some of my favorite relationships. Let me know what yours are. And keep your eye out, because I have a special video coming this week that is all about your guys' favorite relationships and most romantic books that you've ever read. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week. All of it is romance content. I have vlogs and recommendations and all that fun stuff. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.